Yeah. Okay. Kim lernen etwas. Ja, okay. Kitzer Ramaz, ich wollte noch eine Kette wegen der Rambam. Let's try to understand. Okay, you have your paper. I don't know. Where's the Rambam? Nein, ein bisschen Rambam. Okay, so the Rambam. Let me know. I have a thought was I will develop wegen der Rambam. So about Nevi'ah and this. So maybe we'll understand something that's going on.
What page is that?
Page 3.
Somewhere I brought the Rambam, yeah?
Probably Shainim. I think it's Rambam and Shainim.
No, because what I did was first I brought the sources of this idea, but let's skip that for now. It's not so interessant. I bring the sources of wie se steht kol die mai pilen if tulem du drei mekoires nach Chazal. Okay, we could skip that for now. Maybe we'll get back to it in a minute, but right now we'll try to. I want to see what I think about the Rambam. So the Rambam has this minhag, right? So the Rambam is very interesting. The Rambam has this minhag of finishing halachas with something cool, right?
Yeah.
Alte minhag from the Rambam. And it is do ochet, right? And yeah, there's like 2 or 3. What's it called? Sorry. There's like 2 or 3 different structures that he uses. Sometimes he finishes like halacha with like gedoyle. No, he's ending Ilchis Chanukah, gedoyle Shabbos, gedoyle days, gedoyle yans, or yeah, finishes a lot. Or it finishes with something like Moed Yesh Lizur B'zeh. If it's like a loiza say does that, and if you end of Ilchis Asira B'yach I was reading. Right, so yeah, Moed Yesh Lizur B'chokim Ha'arayis, whatever. That's really just the Rambam's flourish for finishing, and then the Shech Nurach made it into halacha. But the Moed doesn't say in the Rambam even. Just like it comes from the halacha. Or yeah, that what they should be mentioned also to David Kanani.
Yeah, but that's how the chiluk in the yichud, those that are in the yichud have the arnarle lev, and it's like a whole like.
Yeah, so he has both. What he does is something like he tries to connect like what I feel like it is doing in the deeper sense is trying to get back to the Tamei mitzvahs. So the Rambam really believes that mitzvahs have a point, and that they're trying to get to somewhere. It is either taken a gift or taken a nev or taken a chevra, basically these 3 things. And he always tries to like read down the Vilchis Chanukah, and I read a whole pilpul to show that Rama when he says Ner Baisev and Ner Shabbos doesn't even mean Ner Baisev and Ner Chanukah means your light in your house, doesn't mean Ner Shabbos. There's Mefarshim that talk like say less. And it's just saying no, the Rama doesn't say Ner Shabbos, it says Ner Baisev. It's Rashi that says Ner Baisev or someone that Ner Baisev shel Shabbos. Yeah, and why? Because if you think about it, Sholem Bayis, right? Sholem Bayis. What's that Sholem Bayis with Shabbos? It's not a din in mitzvahs ner Shabbos. It's a din in Sholem Bayis. Sholem Bayis is every night you need a light or whatever. Maybe Shabbos is different because people go to sleep earlier. Could be for technical reasons. It's only a guy on Shabbos. But
no, you have to light it beforehand. I think you always light it the whole night. Shabbos,
yeah,
didn't make sure that
you could find technical reasons, like you're saying, either like that or I thought so. Okay, well, Kalpunim, I feel the Rambam a lot of the time. I like you see so. He sometimes talks about Tamei mitzvahs, like the end of whichever halacha where he says that yes, we should know the Tamei mitzvahs. Remember, and or something. So I feel like a lot of this organization, like the Rambam has this. We learn a lot from the Rambam's organization. The Rambam's beginning and ends are always where he's the most organized. The middle he sometimes just hacks around shtiklach gemura that he had to find a place for. Like he has to give you and usually in the beginning he tries to give you like either the ikir din, like the ikir klal of the halacha, and then he just quotes all the prutim that he finds in the gemara. Or sometimes he just makes up a whole akdoma, like he just put in his whole theory of Vedazuri, which is whatever, based on some sources, but it's like his own conceptualization. So that's one thing he does. And then in the end, he tries to push it back. So what he does is very, very kinslish, if you think about it. He tries to find, always not random, right? He never like does, like we would do, like Messiah and V'Nasayim, but the very good Bulletzi and Goel, like Hilchas Shabbos is finished, like Shabbos is agreis. The Rambam does that. Shabbos is agreis a mitzvah, and basically Shabbos is zeiches an min el That's how a normal, not such a big mimch like the Rambam. And the Rambam finishes the Shabbos to saying like a halacha, like it's do a halacha that if you're not mechal Shabbos, you're more like a goy than some other mitzvahs, and that's because Shabbos is so important. And from this we learn that the most important thing is not keeping Shabbos, it's believing in God. What's really going on then Hilchas Shabbos, for example, just remind us. Right? That's something. I don't remember. I'm not going to look up everything, but I'm just saying that he connected always to something that he really thinks is the idea of Shabbos. The whole idea of Shabbos is Chedesh Olam or whatever, to believe that there's a God. So now like, and I use this like important halacha to actually like transcend the halacha in a certain sense, like to show you that the halacha has an object, has a purpose, or something like Hilchos Chanukah. He says, Chanukah is a gewaltige mitzvah, but you know what's even bigger mitzvah? To be a nice guy. That's Nechat is very big, and you should be mechazer al psuchim, but you should even more, and kol ha'torah, and that's how I finish it. Hilchos Chanukah, kol ha'torah lanitle las shulim ba'olam shnei medrechei, and you notice like he just included the whole Torah in Hilchos Chanukah suddenly. It doesn't say Shabbos is Ner Shabbos is the Chednak and the ganze Torah. In other words, remember Tamei mitzvahs. Remember I told you I wrote this on Chanukah. Remember I told you Tamei mitzvahs are kol ha'torah kilas to create emes v'shulam, and the Rambam emes means malas hadas, and shulam is a code for malas hamidas. In other words, that's all you have to do. That's the Chednak and calls it shulam. So this is, and the Rambam at least Hilchos Chanukah are about malas hamidas, not about true knowledge, I guess. Because it only quotes Shulam. But anyways, that's what I think is going on in a lot of these ends. And
it's only getting that halacha. It's interesting. Like it's really
but I think that you have to be medayek. This is a prutis de halacha that shows you this value. What's more important? But it's true generally also. You could think like you could be a litvak and say the chedek noim is not a whatever. We can get into this conversation. At least in the time mitzvahs of the Rambam, it's true that the Torah is to create Shulam. Now how it claps us and prutis de halacha, that's already halacha. That's already shalos for a rule. It's not the guy to the ashkufa. I hate this word ashkufa. It's not the guy to the yesod of a minute time. Now, if you read the end of Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah, right? We have to read the whole thing to try to understand the whole structure. But basically,
it's not Megillah v'Chanukah. It's only Megillah.
Yeah, right. But he calls it Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah. Just it's the third part because we're Hilchos Chanukah, right? Because he has this. He does have some sort of like it shouldn't be too short halachas. Like he's not. I don't know why he put them together. He put other stuff together. Shoifer and Lila he put together. Whatever. It was mostly because it's too short. He has this I did it. Shilchas, no?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Rashuni and Sekas are in the same halacha, I think. Yeah, I don't know. The Mag Mishnah has explanations for these things, and it's not K'tomas, I don't remember. Okay, now if you... Yeah, that's because it belongs to... He has a theory for that, the Rambam.
It's a separate
yeah.
It's not Shabbos.
But now, right. Now, if you look the Rambam in the end of Hilchos, in the end of Hilchos Megillah, okay, not Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah, but the end of Hilchos Megillah v'Chanukah Parak Bayit, which is the end of Hilchos Megillah, he has also an ending. And the ending is Hilchos Zayin that I didn't have here. Firstly, Hilchos Zayin, you can see like he's like making a nice drush. And Hilchos Zayin says, Mitev Ludem L'Habes Matunis Lev Yoinem. This is also a halach that Rambam made up. I mean, maybe there's a makar for it, but it's not like a shtickle Gemara Masechta Megillah or something, right? What does the Maggid Mishnah say? Nein, ich treffe es nicht. Ist da ein makar für die halacha? You know what the Maggid Mishnah says? Wow, different Rabbeinu the and I love. This you know this is like the yeshiva shefata when the Rosh says Vani Oime or Levi Oimeli, that's bad, that's makar from the whole shaft, like das ist Rambam gesagt, das ist passt für der Rambam, was soll ich sagen. That's makar, and I don't know, what's Maggid Mishnah about the Bia Chodesh Maspik, who's that? I don't know. It says Ve'emes hanushim sheroim v'yoydem ma sheroim yideh v'yesmachi. What? I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what's going on here. Something is going on. Maggid Mishnah was actually one of the only mefarshim of the Rambam that understood Shittas Rambam, so it's very important to remember.
The Maggid Mishnah?
Yeah.
Oh, the Maggid Mishnah, yeah.
Initially with the case of Mishnah,
Yeah.
because of Rav Maggid, I don't know who's the Chayv Melech. He says, I don't know, people are trying to understand what he means to say. The Master Kach says, they're all very happy with it, but there seems to be some. Yeah, it's very, very sharp illusion. Okay, so that's the okay, that's the source. I don't know. So the source is.
It's often not such a simple thing.
The source is. I know what it means. Mitveled laharbes matnos levein milharbes psidus v'shlich munis l'ra'ev. She'ain shem simcha gedoyle v'em fi'ura el l'samayach lev hanim v'yisayim v'amunis v'gairim. Shem samayach lev hem lulu ma'ali doime l'shchena. She'neim malachis nech shum nachis lev nitkoim. No, what's the problem? This is the Rambam's classic idea, the mitzvah l'damis l'yotz, right? Which means to take care of the poor people. And that's
why is the biggest simcha? Because you're causing simcha.
I don't remember how to. It's a good question. On Sikkas, I had a pshat about what the Rambam thinks by simcha shel mitzvah. The Rambam over here in Sikkas has this whole arichas about simcha shel mitzvah, right? And I understood that simcha to the Rambam, but this doesn't connect to here. Over there, I understood that simcha to the Rambam means lishma. which means the emes b'nai emes v'cheli. Somehow you read, I wrote it up on Sikkos. And I don't know, but then how this connects to l'samayach levaniyim. This is like just malas amidis. This is just l'zdamas lekoyne. And I think that he would say, yeah.
Says Midas Toivus, he brings Daimon the Kaini always.
Well, technically, for sure, yeah. Technically, in L'chazdayis is based on Velachta Bedruchav.
No, but he's a pasuk from Tanakh. I think it's like a different, sounds like it's a special thing. It doesn't sound like it's the regular.
In the Rambam's understanding, the Rambam's understanding, it works like this. This is, yeah, there's, if you go around, the Rambam's understanding works something like this. There's the Indian of you knowing God, right? Now, God answers Moshe, and then he chose him to go midas shalachmim. And the Rambam's understanding of this is basically, we cannot know God for himself. Maybe when you're dead you could, but as long as you're alive you can't. But you could know something which is called achayre, which means masa bereshis, which means you called TV. TV is the Rambam code for masa bereshis. That's exactly how the Rambam. And in other words, you can understand how nature. This is the Rambam Shat, and you can understand how nature works, which is the best which proves that there is a God. That's the best we could know about God. Maybe a little bit more, but we can get into Shlil Satarim and all of that. But we could know basically that. That's one thing you can know. So that's called achayre, basically. That's mukim the Rambam calls it a place. When tzavt tzir is another word for tchilas achayme, and when tzavt batzir means you'll be misblamed in the master bereshis, and you'll know the most a human could know about the existence of God. Okay, in other words, you learn physics, and you'll see that at the end of physics it says that there's a God. That's basically what the Rambam understands. Now, there is another thing which is controversial. To what extent the Rambam takes it seriously, what it actually means. But it says in the end of Moreh Nevuchim and in other places, and where he says that since we cannot, there's at least a reading of the Rambam that says that since we cannot know God, what we could know of God is Mahi Nikrerachem Afata Nikrerachem Afata Hayarachem. Since God is called good and just and all of these things, and we should emulate Him by that. In other words, doing practical philosophy, what Aristotle called practical wisdom, practical knowledge. There's theoretical knowledge, which culminates in knowing God, which is somewhat possible and somewhat impossible. And then what's really possible for humans is what Rambam calls Chesed Tzedukah Mishpat, remember the end of Moreh, which is the other side of this, like what is possible to know of God is His actions. And His actions, somehow we're supposed to learn that His actions are good. Since the nature is good, and therefore you should try to create a just world. You should try to do tzedukah and mishpat. The Rambam explains what's tzedukah and what's mishpat. Remember the end of Moreh has a whole being, and tzedukah is bechinam and mishpat is nish bechinam, whatever it is. But that's really a certain understanding of God, or that's. In other words, in Aristotle's language, this is like practical philosophy. This is ethics, basically, which then means political philosophy or ethics. Just means the lemasa de chachma, the chachma that tells you what to do lemasa. And of course, the Rambam Simcha means always a suga. That you have to know that. Rambam says that there's no way to be masi God and not be happy about it. That's like the biggest simcha possible. So obviously, yeah, that's why if you there's some kind of knowledge, or like a practical knowledge, but it's actually a knowledge of God's actions, which is, in a certain sense, the best knowledge we can have of God. Even physics is really just God's actions, right? Because we only have Tarei Pele, we don't have any other attributes of God. But that's at least one understanding of how that would work in the Rambam's view. Right. So it seems less. And now, going back to that's like for the theology, maybe how it's same. But practically, what he's doing is the Rambam is thinking. He comes to the end of Hilchas Megillah, and Megillah is a gewaltige Yomtiv, and and the Rambam is thinking, okay, now what do I do with this? What is the point of it? I'll tell you what the point of it. The point is that we have l'samayach levlim lulim. That's the point of it. There's other mitzvahs, so he found you this mitzvah, right, which he made up by himself, because we don't have a source for it. Look, if I'm sure the Chaim Kanievsky has a source for it, you have to look. I don't have the Frankel new one. You have to look. I'm sure there's some source for it. Or the scene on the side, there's some source. Okay, that's some medrash ergets. But seriously, if the Magnishna didn't have a source, it means that it's not like.
It's not part of halacha.
No, there's always sources for everything, but it means that it doesn't say Nachas Mechts Megillah, Sechtes Gittin, or whatever, where it should say. So probably it's the Rambam's cycle. And I think just like in Hilchas Hanukkah, the Rambam uses these kind of Hilchas Kedima, like Hilchas Kedima in the Rambam, right? If you have, that's technically what the Rambam is doing. He's making a din Kedima. Hast $100, you have two options. Could I buy a bigger Mishlech Monas or a bigger Metunas Lefyanim? Kamash Pilon the Rambam, you should use it for Metunas Lefyanim, right? I don't know if it's true the halacha that he says, but that's what theoretically the Rambam says this is definitely true. Why? Because the Iker Simcha is to be Masmach Lefyanim, because that's what at least Piram to him is mostly about. Maybe there's also a part of Dais Nachanis, which he says actually in the beginning of Mitzvah, that there's a point. I don't know about a din. It says in the Mishteh Simcha, yeah. I mean, Piram is about Simcha. It's about making Mishteh Simcha. To the Rambam, so now the Rambam is halacha, right? This is not really a halacha, because the Rambam doesn't have, like, in Chanukah he has a better halacha, like it's mamish nidcha, right? If you have ner baisa, so you don't light Chanukah left. He can't say don't make a seed appear. Really, he might want to say that. It seems like he wants that. He's itching to say that. But he can't say that. So he says it's mitzvah laharbas b'zeh, mish laharbas b'zeh. He says in L'chas Yom Tov the same thing, right? Remember. But because he can't be doiche the actual simcha, and also I think there's also a reason for that, because he really thinks, like the Rambam says in Moira in Chayla Gimel, that one of the reasons is just like everything else. There's two levels of reasons. There's a social or tikkun hagif reason and tikkun nefesh reason. And to the Rambam, me'adam have a social function, which is to be mar ba'achdes. Remember, he quotes Aristotle on this. That holidays are not only to worship God, they're also to get people together. It's a big part of Yom Tovim is that we come together, make a little regel or mishpucha, whatever, and then it's mar ba'ahav v'rayis, and he says that we can't have a society without holidays.
No,
it says in Moira and Chalegim. No, but I feel like this is what he's going at, so that's why I think you can't be mevatel the simcha, because the point of the simcha is to get you to give to the Malam. That's how he sees it, or to Stamazo, if you don't meet anyone ever, like when are you going to care about him? So we have to make times. We make parties together, and parties are their point of the parties is to how they call it gibush. Yeah, we make to get together the chavre, to get together the oilam. So okay, anachanami. There's anachanami. There's no but
that's what I said on the.
Yeah, we'll see. So you can't be mevatel. That's what I'm getting at. You can't say, okay, the Rambam says you should only give money, so you can't make a check instead of the party, because the party is there to get you to give bigger checks, which it works. Man, you could see that it works. But what he's trying, but he's
since they made it the big thing, I mean, it was like they tripped. They made
but it's
little
trying
nappy things, then they started spending money on the big things.
No, but it's about that. So I think that's why the Rambam is using this adifis, right? You can't say that, like, this is similar to all the other Tam mitzvahs. Everyone says, okay, let's do the Tam without the mitzvah. The answer is that it doesn't work. Come on. The same thing. We need to have the simcha in order to have the tunas lefyanim, which is the point. The real point, if you think like level of Tam mitzvahs, the real point is, maybe there's also a point of simcha, like people have psychological needs for simcha and so on. And like the Chinuch says, the Rambam also says it over there. That's another, but the real social point is that, so therefore you have to remember that. That's what he's getting at in this halacha. And now there's another sif. There's the sif that I brought that we have to try to understand. Now there's another sif, v'shtat azay. And it's very weird for the Rambam to bring it, because the Rambam is actually the last one you would expect to bring such a halacha, right? Look, the Rambam, kol sifr neviim v'kol aksivim. Hasid lebut le'mois HaMashiach, chitz me'megillas Esther, rai kiyemes k'chamish ha'chimish ha'toyre, v'kelchas shel toyre sh'bapesh, eine metayl l'olam. Number one. V'aval pisha kol zekur natzuris yivatel, shenem k'nish k'atzuris rishonis v'chinistim ayna, yimayra pirim lo yibatli, shenem v'may pirim lo yivab dechmid, v'zichel m'yosef mizanav. So, okay, tell me what's going on here.
Well, why do you think this is something the Rambam shouldn't bring?
The parsh this, because everyone right away the question that people would ask. By the way, I wanna let's notice this. The Ravid right away has asuga, right? Different idiotis is this is dvar idiotis, right? But by the way, you'll notice what's going on. No, the question that most people would ask, and people have asked, of course, the Rashba have asked, someone has asked the Rashba this question, and the Radva is okay. I think the Rashba is the first source for someone asking such a question. For the Rashba, this is what's interesting to me, right? So, of course, what do you mean? The Rambam is actually the one that took this ikr very seriously, and he made this whole ikr of chikas olam, right? And then you just write randomly aloch and ilchas Megillah. Weißt du was? We're gonna just be mevatel all the neviim eksivim besides for Megillah Esther. Right. So verstehst das kasha, ja? Verstehst das this kasha? It's most people that read this, they actually get it's a kasha, and then the Rashba says it's teretz, might nicht. The Rashba has a whole teretz that doesn't mean it literally, but the Rambam does seem to take it literally. He doesn't. When the Rambam wouldn't want to take such a thing literally, he would write it. Like, this is not the kind of thing where you could say, okay, the Rambam matmatik in the Gemurah. Nobody's forcing him to be matmatik of Shalmi or whatever he got it from. I think Lushna Rambam was from the Shalmi mostly. It's also like a medrash, but the Rambam was getting it from the Shalmi and Megillah. No, but the idea, the way the Rambam puts it is from the Yerushalmi. I'll show you. If you look in the sources, you'll see why. Because if you think about, so let's try to see what I think the Rambam is actually saying. What if you'll see, and you tell me what you think. You'll see that the Rambam doesn't have the language that the Mi'adim will be butul. He does have it in the second part. So the Rambam kind of divides it into two different parts, which are interesting, right? The language that everyone remembers is from the language of the Kali, which says, what is the Kali? The Kali says, right? That seems to be saying that, Pesach will be butul and not
What are you reading from what?
The language of if you go on page 2, the language of Eliezer HaKaleh, which is the most famous language that everyone knows because everyone used to say Peitim.
Kalir.
Kalir? Okay. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know his last name.
No, I think English.
Kalir?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know how to say
Ich kenne the Chassidische Weg. Everyone used to know, all this forum quote this language because this is the most popular because nobody reads Yerushalmi or Medrash Tehillim or whatever. They all read.
Wow, that's he's saying. That's where it comes from. The whole thing comes from the Kalir, really.
Nachman, the Kalir is a Medrash just like any other Medrash. I don't have a problem with him. Even if he was the time of the Medrash or he paraphrased Medrashim, it doesn't matter. He's a Medrash. He's a Medrash. No, the language of the Kalir is similar to the language of the Medrash Mishli, I guess. But he's talking about Mi'adim being Betailim. And this obviously is a lot more controversial than what the Rambam says. Because he's talking about we could justify that also, but that seems with the Khalid doesn't seem to have the problem. So we could say the Khalid is not worried about this till Samech he was before the Rambam. Why would he be worried about it, right? No, seriously, why would he be worried about it? He doesn't seem to be worried about these kind of theological issues ever. Maybe I'm just making this up. Yeah, he's very worried about. Yeah, but you see the things that the Khalid is worried about, right? The Khalid is contemporary. He's not a malakit. It is a malakit, but from the Zachem was in the Ga'etzi, right? That Kala the Mushal turns everything into every single thing. You notice the Kala is this amazing, he's the first person that made everything relevant, right? Remember the first. All the Midrashim are about this, but I'm saying if you read the Siddur, he's like, instead of davening Shabbos Kulim, Shabbos Zocher, Shabbos Pura, Shabbos Chodesh, every single Shabbos of the year is about Mashiach should come, right? It's always about, and he has all kinds, thousands of ways of saying it, but it's always about, look, we had this old relationship with God, and he kind of abandoned us, and please stop abandoning us. Very, very traditional, very, always starts to and we're still doing Pesach, and you're not doing Pesach. That's a very Kaler trope. He does it in Shabbos Zucher. It's like one of the sharpest pieces of Kaler that we know. Zucher, and it's based on a Medrash, but it's not, he didn't make it up himself. But he says this, we remember, you don't remember. And the gedenkst alles, and so come on. Or you see Shabbos, just in Shabbos Shkulim, the whole thing is about, I read it. I don't know about it, they don't say Peter, so I had to look at it. But he says, and then he talks the whole time about, we've sinned, and we stopped being, maybe the chet was that we stopped bringing Shkulim, he says that something like that, I'm sure there's like a makar for that. And then he says, we're ready to bring Shkulim again. So, remember, Gedenk, let's get back to it. So he's very worried about it. And he actually... That's what he says, and it's over here. Who was saying?
They didn't always bring, but we wanted to bring, they didn't bring with the geschmack. I thought it was
and he even names the people that he's mad at. I mean, he's sitting side. Oh, that's about Haman. But he's like, he often like names who he's like, who the goyim are that you should give part, like you should forget about, that you should remember us, and so it's not. He's not like, you can't say that he's not. That he's not contemporary. For whatever his time is, he's worried about being English and making it. Where do you think it says that? It's this shtickle. I don't know. He just says. He actually just says. He doesn't even know he's do tshiva. He just says. I've been left without it, and please get us back to it. I noticed he has a lot of the language of Akol Pshum Tchasahava, just cover up our Pshum already, what's the days? I don't know. Maybe you'll find where does it say such a thing?
Yeah, I think it's in Musaf in the beginning.
Okay, Akitzer. So if he would be like the Rambam, who would be very worried about the Christians saying that they have the Torah and the Torah stopped and so on, and he knew about Christians and Muslims, I think. But he's not. He's not worried about this. So the Rambam, everyone know, obviously one of the reasons the Rambam is very worried about this changing the Torah is because of these two daughter religions that are kind of into that in different ways, right? We basically have two ikrim against Christianity and Islam, right? Christianity is the one that says Torah was changed, and Islam's changed, saying that Torah is not authentic. And against these two things, he kind of writes two ikrim, right? So we're going to get to Navi's Moshe in a second. But more or less, these two Yisodis that he has, which are the 8th and the 9th, I think, which says the Torah will never be changed, God's Torah cannot be improved upon, and that the Torah we have is the authentic one. This is gegen the zwei Klippes, against these two Tamas. And the Kali is not worried about this, so he seems to be very happy with things changing. At least if you read what it says Kipshita in this piece. But the Rambam, when the Ayid was worried wegen der Sache, and why would he write such a thing? Like, what does he even want from this? Why is it interesting to him? Just like we said, the Rambam is in the end of halacha is interested in like promoting that halacha, and usually not only promoting it but bringing it into a tachlis that he wants it to get to. Right? This is just random. Like, when Mashiach will come, there'll be no Peter, there won't be no other Ksidim Nevi'im Ksidim. So
uniqueness of Purim is unique. These halachas are unique. Everything's going to be supposed to remain.
And just promotion. Like, well, why? Who cares about? We don't have to pump Peter. Go Peter. What's the point of that? He doesn't really do that ever. You see, whenever he does these gedolas, there's always a vart in them. What's the vart here? I think, I don't know, maybe you could find me one that not. Like just the two that I just remembered, like Shabbos and Chanukah, and they always have, there's a vart in them. Like Shabbos is important because it's about, there is always a because. This is just a random pump. Like, okay, let's pump Piram. You could pump Piram.
Why is it?
It's special. Okay, and everyone, the other ones are special in some other way. It's true. He has a lot of gedoilas, gedoilah tshiva. Everything is gedoilah. Okay, but what's the point? There has to be a point. And now you'll notice that the Rav wasn't either worried about the Rashba's problem. This is the coolest, even cooler part. And I love showing these kind of things. Like everyone, like I say that there's never dogmatic questions in all of the Rishonim until the Rambam gets his influence into the Kali. So nobody has these kind of problem with apikarsische questions. Like I keep on saying, like the Gemara said, the Mishnah said, "Oiman tchias ma'is na Torah is apikaris." Kim the Gemara zok mena ein shet tchias ma'is na Torah. Flicken zeg ik yeah, tell me. Menashe said, "Rush shall die for you." Vad is Moshe and what was that? No, but I'm trying to say you don't find. We argue with this stuff. You don't find in Kol. I don't find in Kol Shas and not in whole Toysis and Rasha and whole Rasha and whole Toysis and the whole. Until we get to people that are students of the Rambam, like the Ramban and the Rashba, which are students of the Rambam in a very significant sense. Until we get to that, we don't find anyone saying, "How can this Hestia think is the Chapikarstis?" There's a lot of reasons why not to say things. You never get this like stop type of causes. Like the Gemara said, The guy said that the Torah is not the last Moshe Rabbeinu didn't write it, and the other guy said no, it doesn't make sense. Right? It doesn't say it's not because it's just a question. He might have a good Tana or not. We could and then some other Rishonim might have cash on a different posik. Okay, so that's geschrieben. They never thought it's like a precursors problem. They just thought of, yeah, it might be important that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it, but it's not about the Kitzer. And even the Rava, then you see the Rava, then it's beautiful actually. I love this Rava. The Rava says that doesn't make sense. This is different yoites. By the way, what does it mean Mikolas Furim? From any book in the world? Doesn't mean only Kisvei HaKodesh? Maybe it means any book. Maybe I could make a...
No, it's
why would you burn books? The Rava is basically saying, what's this burning books about? If there's a book, it's useful, right? Because Rabbis learn from them. I have a limit, right? So what does this even mean? Why is the Rambam saying we're going to be mevatel books? There's a Shalmi that says Yivatel Megillah says to what it means says. Okay, so I don't know what the Rambam is conceding that it's not important enough to read it b'tzibah. What's the Rava's pshat? It can't be. We don't burn book. Couldn't go the Rava is against book burning. There's always every book is useful. Okay, Kolshkin from the Kisvei HaKodesh probably means I'm belemed mekan sich lernen halacha or missa whatever. We didn't write so the Duvra. How's the Gemara say? It's nitzchel right? There must be a point in it. So why would you say that we should stop? Why do we stop reading the book of Yeremiah? There's a lot of important things to learn from it. In other words, he's answering a question, right? Maybe we should stop reading the book of Yeremiah because Mashiach came. And Yeremiah is all about how to get Mashiach to come or whatever. There's a certain context to them. We have to get to this really, right? There is a good reason to think that Nevi'im Eksima should be brutal bepashtas the Rav is verempfing here, right? I think even the Rambam, right? And this is really a really good question actually. If you think about, I actually think I've been thinking recently that most people don't really believe that Nevi'im Eksivim are not brutal. I think they were long brutal already. You see, I have another radical chat which says Asidli brutal means they were already brutal. Because seriously, when was the last time that someone passed in the halacha or did anything realistic from any Nevi'im Eksivim? Any of them? Or actually even from the Chemesh. When was the last time?
When was the last time it was learned and taught?
Yeah, but that comes after. Until Haretzion. But you must Ramban, the Arba Benel, you must Haretzion, wasn't it? No, I'm saying, yeah, that's one question. Well, when was the last time was that relevant to anyone? That Maila learned, we can learn things now. It says, the Rav Zok, we can't have learn from them. Let's assume that the Rav is right.
No, I'm saying it's not so. No.
Let's go badly is Budel for Nikolai. I'm interesting. It's.
Because whichever things the Gemara already accepted from the Chemesh, that's the ones we accept. The rest of them we disregard.
No, because so
that's basically what's going on over there.
In that place. Our rebel mass is Gemara. We don't Gemara.
Okay, by the way, we don't learn Gemara either. Only the Gruniks learn Gemara.
What do you mean?
Litvikas learn Gemara. Some of them.
Why?
The Grunik Litvikas learn Gemara. And the Chaznishnikas sometimes. Nobody learns Gemara to decide. When's the last time the Gemara was relevant to something? Yeah, I mean the traditional way is to learn Shulchan Aruch and Shach. Wasn't it? I don't think the Guru saw himself as doing a radical thing. He's going in the Shulchan Aruch and nobody even read Tor. They just read Shulchan Aruch and the Guru is saying, well, they start Gemara. They says he's not the Guru. The Bira Guru is not Chadishim. He doesn't. Most of the time, he's just matter of that everyone knows. Anyone that learned the Torah knows them. Most of the time.
People don't really always learn Gemara. I'm just saying,
I'm sure they learned Gemara, but it was not relevant. No, that's not right. The Dvid is one of the Gruniks. The Dvid is very not. No. Not really. I don't know if that's true. Not sure. I don't think because the Shach. It's not true because to the Shach, a Sefer Itter is more or less relevant as much as a Gemara. Yeah. Even to the Shach, of course. To the Nevi'im not. This guy wrote a book about this. What's his name? Of course. There's a big Chiddush. Nevi'im is one of the ones that make this Chiddush. Actually, where the Nevi'im has a hierarchy where Gemara is more important than some Mordche. You know who? The Seed, no, is a very good book about this. I've lent it to someone. I lent it to someone. Rav Maoz Kahana wrote a very nice book about this. Yeah, but I'm telling you, the Gemara is not to him that he is sought. It's not. No. Yeah, he does sometimes get mad at people for changing the halakha. That's one of.
So until I know a teretz, we're going to go against the Rishonim because
okay, and but it's definitely not. He definitely wouldn't even imagine that it's possible to only learn Gemura and have halacha from that.
Fine.
The group could imagine that, and he actually wants to do that. He's actually mad at there being so many poskim, you know, that he has to take care of.
Okay. You want to use something?
No.
Oh,
no. I was saying criticism on it. That's why he said it's a Tanakh. It's very good enough when you get to the Gemara and you get to those psukim, you ought to know the Gemara.
Yeah, that's a good reason to learn.
So he's like so upset. Like the message was that there's no point in learning it.
I think he's right, but I think he's right traditionally. I think he's right, Rabbi Yochanan.
What?
I think Rabbi Yochanan is right. You should learn Tanakh to understand Midrash Chazal. You should not learn it for itself. That's Christianity. I don't know what shit that is. I agree with that.
No,
it's weird. No, you should learn it. It's a good thing to learn. Just like the Rav, I'm with the Rav. You should learn everything. Ein Sefer, I have a limit. If someone wrote a book, Yom Busav Adam had something to tell you. Why? You have to. Yeah, we only have a certain amount of time, so we learn the ones that are most important to us. But burning books is a stupid thing. But wait. So nach lenanis. Okay, let's try to. So let's try to go back to something much simpler. So I got ahead of myself, right? Let's try to get back somewhere. It seems to me that this Rambam is actually trying to say Sod to him. And what he's saying is that Nevi'im Ksiv are irrelevant. And they never were relevant. Because one of the big Rambam's big problems, you see, if you read the Akdum of Peresh Mishnais and the Yisodat Torah Perek Tes, right? And the Sefer and the Ikrem, is one of his big problems is the value of Nevi'im versus Torah's Moshe. Because to the Rambam, the moment you say that a Novi could decide a halacha, or create a halacha, or anything similar to that, you shomet et hakarka, you pull the rug out of the whole and importance of Torah's Moshe. The whole importance of, in other words, of Yiddishkeit, right? Torah's Moshe meaning Yiddishkeit, right? Because the Novi could do anything relevant to halacha in his language, or actually anything relevant to truth, we would say, right? Not only halacha, also when aguda. The Ram doesn't have a different halacha and aguda in this sense. Then some guy would come and ask people have come and say, look, we have a Navi too. Let's do this Jesus guy, there's this Muhammad guy, they're Nevi'im just like your Nevi'im are, and we're not disagreeing. Even like the Muslims went very much with this. We're not saying that you were not a Nevi'im. Everyone is Nevi'im. We're just the most recent Nevi'im. It makes sense to go with the most recent Novi. Then they also came up with the Chasimus Nevi'im, which is pretty funny. You know, everyone stops at some point, besides for the Mormons, they have Latter-day Saints, but everyone else has a Chasimus Nevi'im. Yeah, of course. There's actually evangelicals. There was a New York Times article yesterday about evangelical Nevi'im that prophesies that Trump will win and what they're doing now. So, and they call themselves prophets, and there's a big machloikis, a big shal of what to do now that the Nevi'im. Yeah, I can show you. You could see on YouTube. Yeah, it's very interesting.
Who are they?
I can't. They're not Nevi'im. That's one thing they're not, because they don't even know. They failed the most basic test.
One of them?
Oh, what are you? Oh, this time. This time around. Oh.
Yeah.
But they really could.
No, then they didn't have prophecies last time. The prophecies were this time. Last time nobody had these prophecies.
No, what do you mean? Because he really won. Because it was just a fraud.
Oh, we can't
really won.
I don't know why I'm saying this. No, I'm just saying Tachlis. Tachlis is the drama, but this is a real issue, a real threat. To acknowledge Nevi'im as being a real part of the Torah is a real threat to him. And for this he makes a big Chiddush, or at least he amplifies 10,000 times more than it was ever amplified in the Gemara and so on. The idea of Anu destroy l'chadash dov me'atu. And Rambam, you see that he's conscious of this being a Chiddush, because it would be simple if every other Yid would understand that, he wouldn't have to write 20, 30 pages about it. The Rambam doesn't write pages about things that are obvious. Yeah, that's the big example. The Rambam doesn't write 30 pages about things that everyone agrees with. It's not his thing. He writes pages about things that are really, really big Chiddushim. And he came up with this huge Chiddush that there's only Torah's Moshe. What are Nevi'im for? He really left with this question. What are Nevi'im for? And of course, we could talk about Chazal, maybe Torah Shemaim is connected. I don't know, with this the big Nevi'cha and exists, but at least the Shitas Rambam is. Therefore, we're left with a question: what are Nevi'im for? And to the Rambam, they're kind of useless. Look, the Rambam in Ilches, where should we read? In Ilches, no, Imkain, in Ilches Yisodat Torah, right? Which is probably the most obvious place, right? So if you look in Yisodat Torah, no, Yisodat Torah. Right, or we should Akdom Fetish Mishnais is probably more Where is it? No, what is Nevi'ah? I was with Moshe Rabbeinu. Why we don't believe other Nevi'im? Okay, that's another whole thing. Imkain. Okay, this is the halacha I meant, right? The Burim and finish Torah doesn't change, and therefore, if someone comes and says we should change, even with a moifus, we don't believe him. This is a pshetel. This is pilim gagal gag. All these rambams that everyone thinks are simple, they're mamish pilim gagal gag. Your Novi Sheikh was because Moshe said that it's never going to change. This is illogical, and the Sefer can already notice that this logic doesn't work. But I'm not getting into this. It's mamish pilim gagal gag. Now, but let's assume that this is true. Nevi'im cannot say anything. If they do, they're Nevi'ah Sheikh.
I'm online had a different shot in the Peshach Shai.
Could be. What? That it's Novi Sheikh? It became worse?
Why?
Why you can't change? But that's, you mean the previous part. Okay. Okay, it's Imkain, but let's understand. The Rambam therefore has a big kasha. This Imkain is manchmal riesige Imtoimer of the ganze Rambam. Imkain, lo men betoir no willkommen nach. Why do we have Nevi'im, basically? It's kasha on the Pusik. Because this Pusik is actually like one of the biggest kashas on Shitas Rambam. And it might even like be a machlokas psikim. This Pusik literally says, there will be a Novi Kamoichu. Nicht, also wie der andere Pusik steht, there's no Novi Kamoichu. Bleibt befehlisch. Kamoichu, nicht ke'en, hat at least every time, it says, there'll be a Novi like you, and you should listen to him. Literally, fertig Pusik. Look at Rambam, he's like, what's mine, this? Leut las es das Ibu. Let's have us al divrei HaTorah, for the Hazram Shli Avroleu, or divrei Rishis. So basically, well, divrei Rishis are kind of irrelevant, whatever. It's very, divrei Rishis are always going to have to be, divrei Rishis are actually very bad, because they can't even make a divrei Rishis b'kfiyas. It has to be temporary, right? You can't even make a nu halacha b'divrei Rishis. You can't even say you should always make mechumas. You can only say, this mechumah, God said it's going to work out. And that's the big mitzvah of l'shmoyel hanovi, is if a novi tells to make a mechumah hayoim, aloi tasi, mitzvah l'shmoyel. But anything related to religion, the last is das, right? The Rambam was using this word das, is nisht. All Novi does not add any information. A Novi is the most simple mashgiach in yeshiva. Kenish can learn. Darf nicht kann lernen. Darf nur sagen, tzitz was steht in der Teure. He's the most simple mister, right? Mister in the sense of the Mesil Shurim, where he's loy bu lois of chedishim, right? I call this mister. Kim nish in chedishim. And you can add mofs, you can add, you can add a lot of rhetoric around why it's important to keep the Torah and why if you're not, you're going to be punished. But basically, Novi is useless as far as information is concerned. There is no content in Gold Sefer HaNevi'im. Nicht du was to learn. Lafika deravet. Nicht du was to learn from Gold Sefer HaNevi'im. The only thing you could learn is do what it says in the Torah, or some pink demos of Yana Melchomas, Lugalungan, all kinds of history, which the Rambam doesn't probably think is very important. But Beitzim, it's a Torah. It's a Torah to the Rambam has to mean is not stam. Torah to the Rambam is true, either true knowledge or true values, true morals, right? True. That there's nothing in Nevi'im. Kein ein Wort nicht. Du kannst nicht gar nicht lernen von Nevi'im. Nobody thinks like this, but he really thinks like this, the Rambam. Therefore, all Nevi'im Eksivim, they're just repeating it themselves, saying Hita Torah. Or the Rambam in Hilchas Shiva says a language, Kol Nevi'im Haziri Alat Shiva. Remember? And what the Rambam means to say is, all the Nevi'im are doing is telling you to do Shiva. Because they can't say anything else. We read it like saying like, the Rambam is machen Shiva, like große Sachen, and alle Nevi'im reden wegen Shiva. Like he's using that to prove that Shiva is possible, that Bechira is possible. He's also saying that Nevi'im are only trying to make valid Shivas, and what the good and the bad is, we already know before them. They cannot tell us any about that, right? So therefore, what's the only things that are true? Now I think that this is what the Rambam is really getting at. Therefore, Limasa Mashiach, I'm actually ready now. That's what I'm saying. You don't have to wait for Limasa Mashiach. The only thing, the Nevi'im are irrelevant. And when Mashiach, now why is it relevant now, if you think about it? Because we still have to use it to do Tshiva. The Kol Nevi'im are to get to the Limasa Mashiach. We should do Tshiva, and then and that's all. We should start to listen to the Torah, basically. But no more information. So the second Limasa Mashiach is, they've accomplished their purpose, right? We don't need the Mashgiach anymore when the Olam already wakes up for his Man Kadeshma. Again, he did his job. So what would be the point of having called Sefer Nevi'im Eksivim? So called Sefer Nevi'im Eksivim. Masid Nebutli Mas Mashiach. The Rambam, this is important to believe this. They're useless. They don't add any information. If this is Megillas Esther, then I don't know. Now this part is the one that's problem, right? Chitzim Megillas Esther, and then he says, right? So of course, Chamesh Torah is to the Rambam, the Torah that changes, and Halucha Shelish Lopeh, which is Perish Torah, is of course also the thing that cannot change, Lo'ila, although of course it's more complicated than that, but theoretically the Yisodas don't change Laila. And Megillas Esther is basically Megillas Esther. What's the Rambam hold of Megillas Esther? Remember, the Rambam had a problem with mitzvahs Drabunan, right? The Rambam in the beginning, in the beginning of Sefer Yad.
I guess go on.
Beautiful, beautiful. Let's read the Rambam, the Akdumas Rambam, right? Right, Akdumas Rambam on Mishnah Torah. Where do I find it here? No, we'll just go here. So halacha shel Torah shebepeh we understand, right? That's just Torah shebepeh, right? Now, if you read the Akdumas Rambam, and this is also in the Rambam in no, it's here, right? No, so it's the end. It's in the wrong place, right? It's in the total end of.
What do you look for?
It's the end of the list, I think.
It's in the total end of the Akdumas, so gedenkach, and
What are you looking for?
Where it says, how could you make if the Torah says Leisosif, how do you add anything to the Torah?
Right, so it's basically. You could if you want. No, it's not here. It's in the end of the list of mitzvahs, no? But I don't see it here. This is the list of mitzvahs. Mitzvahs aseh. I don't know where is the right place.
Like it would be after the column.
Yeah, it's here. It's the end of Tarig mitzvahs. I learned Tarig mitzvahs nit lemosh missi, in a hankel sign and so on. V'yesh mitzvahs achayres. Now this is the Rambam's understanding. Now there's other mitzvahs. And it's chatshi achar matan Torah. V'kavias neviim v'chachomim. V'pashti b'chol Yisrael. So neviim v'chachomim to him is an interesting language, but of course he doesn't believe that neviim could make mitzvahs within neviim. Just randomly chachomim that were neviim. A pashti b'chol Yisrael, which is another condition to the Rambam, right? The Rambam made up this Tanai of Pashti B'chal Yisrael, which is why we have to listen to Talmud Bavli and not to the Goyinim, which is a big chiddush of the Rambam. Kigan Mikra Megillah, V'nei Chanukah, V'tanach Tishba, V'yidayim V'ayreven. So these are his examples. Of course, the first one he thinks of is Megillah, which is literally a mix for the only one that's in Nevi'im, really. Maybe Ayreven according to the Gemara or whatever. But V'yesh L'chol Mitzvah V'ayin. Of course, this is also I have to explain them, right? So that's how the Rambam starts actually L'chas Megillah, right? Mitzvah Sasai Mitzvah Safrim L'kras Megillah. Now, kol alei mitzvahs, we have to listen to it. Lo yisois. What's about lo yisois if we will sigra many? Shlein over the shul chadash dover. It means you cannot change anything with these targums. Aval imay sifi derech takun, derech hayru, derech gezair. Einzit es seifes. Shlei amri. This is the important thing that Rambam says in L'chas Mamrim also. Again, very shan. If he says that you kind of miss if you say that, right? If you say. If I would say we mean that's the Rambam. The Rambam would have never written Ashek Shem Mitzvah. It's funny on that. He just stuck. We doesn't say Hashem. God told us make a ayah. What we Megillah. And this is he uses the example of Megillah, which is the first example because it's the actually printed in the Kisvei HaKodesh. That's to the Rambam. The only interesting thing in Nevi'im is basically a mitzvah shechitchi chachamim. Nevi'im v'chachomim doesn't matter. Mitzvah shechitchi chachamim, right? Just like the Mechadash Nechalanek, just like the Mechadash Tilsidan, the Mechadash. It happens to be the only one that's actually in the Bible, right? So in other words, if we, so in other words, I think what the Rambam is. In other words, I think the Rambam is saying like this: you don't need Nevi'im Miksiv. Nevi'im Miksiv might useless. But what do you need? No, you need Chemish Torah and Mishnayos, right? Or another way, Chemish Torah and Rambam, right? It's the same thing, right? Mishnah Torah is just Mishnayos plus Gemara, plus the halachas with the Gemara. Halachas Torah is prepared, right? Yeah, that's. He literally called it Mishnah Torah. No, it doesn't mean that, but he literally modeled himself after Rabbi Danusi. He's very open about this, right? And he says. So we only need that, but since we don't have in the Torah Shtanish Mikra Megillah, we do need Megillah's Esther because that's where it says the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. By the way, it doesn't say the mitzvah of Mikra Megillah. Esther, so that's a problem.
No,
but
why do you have to say?
We need it in order to make kind of mitzvah.
Yeah, it's what do you mean?
No, I think that's. I think that's. No, let's get to that. No, and let that. No, but that has to do with the second part, right? Let's.
It's not that because the Rebbe just says you need everything else also. But no, the Rambam is too late to medafas open. It's the time of the nish in days.
Let me think. Let's see what he said. He said more the yadik. Elekach oimrim shanavim im bezdin, right? Of course, navim are useless. It just means happen to be navim. Either they are or they're not. But im bezdin tikni v'tzivi likras amagil benu. Se kedai lahat kashluchosh lagishbach v'tshias shuseloni. V'ayikura l'shavani kedai levarch v'lhallah. This is like kriyos azilila, right? The kedai lo idea l'doyres abuem she'emes ma'ashef dechuni v'toyre migo gudla shloel krev ma'alav. So this is actually beautiful, like Tzvi is saying.
Why is he saying it? Yeah.
The Megillah doesn't say anything that doesn't say in the Torah. This is actually a Gemara in Tan. It's like a middle the Ksiv Bervim. Ksiv is letting me by Reis. But he's saying the Nevi'im, they have 2 points. One is, let's say like this. So there's Lahas Keshvucha Shlomokim, which in the Rambam's view, actually, all Lahas Keshvucha Shlomokim is only relevant to the true knowledge, right? So we mask it. Also, G'dai Laida says something. Everything gets up to a Laida says something. That's the Rambam's big boyfriend Kluli and everything. But what we do is Lahas Keshvucha Shlomokim. So that's he. Of course, there's a lot of Rambams that seem to contradict that. That's why he also contradicts himself here. But there's an Indian Lohoidus Lashem, the Varchev V'Halai, which the Rambam really only means a way to be mechanech yourself, to think about God and to know, to acknowledge Him. But beside that, and l'idea she'emes mashkusev v'toyre k'migal gud lashleilim krayv ma'alef. In other words, the Megillah is a kemash palon that it's true that tefillah works. That's basically well. Of course, the Rambam doesn't really believe that tefillah works, so that's a problem. But there's an episode idea she'emes mashef tichuni b'toyre. That's the big aspect of his thing. Right. So now we understand the pashto that the Rambam says that. Yeah, you have the tichuni b'toyre. Right, but this is a certain knowledge. Well, how does the Rambam understand Migo Gud Lashleilim Krev Ma'alav? I don't know. I don't know what's his understanding of this, because the Rambam thinks that tefillah is also just a attempt to know that there is a God. And he says it openly in Moira. It's not a Mishkan. But besides, he's not getting to that level over here. What he's getting at is that the Megillah is another Bekitza we could put into the category of Chimach L'Dayas Nechoinas. Right? There's a true daya which is Ashleilim Krev Ma'alav, and that's what the Megillah says there's about. And Masha'ai Lafika, it's not a Chiddush of the Nevi'im really. It just, the Nevi'im, Derech Takuna, what's Derech Takuna mean? Derech Takuna means they're not really Mechadish. It's somewhat theoretical, this whole Chilik, because to the Rambam most mitzvahs are like this, so it's not very different. But this Vart is that we're not, so we have to get.
Are you allowed to do this? I mean, what's the point?
So there's two things what you're allowed to do. Firstly, there's very theoretical, technical chilik that the Rambam makes that you're allowed to make a tekuna, but not allowed to make a mitzvah. Ma ban tekuna la mitzvah. We have to ask this question. What is the difference? The Rambam says that a novi can't make. I don't even know if a novi can make a tekuna. He can only make a reshu, but din shmiel le novi. So that's what this is medin lesusip said. This is din lesusip. And chum can make tekunas actually the doiras. To the Rambam's view, and this is a very good question, what kind of difference would there be between a takuna and a mitzvah? If you call it a takuna, you call it a mitzvah. They don't claim it to be a B'Hashem, and therefore, what? Imagine Muhammad would come and say it's not a B'Hashem. How would that help us?
What do you mean? No. What do you mean? No, but this is a whole different thing. I mean, there's no other mitzvah. I mean, we don't have anything else from God.
I think that more significant. Right, but who cares? And if there is the Rambam doesn't believe that Nevi'im are not from God. He thinks that they're from God. It's just a din that a Nevi can't. See, this is weird because it could be from God. It's just that it doesn't become a mitzvah. Ledoiris at least. The God can make a ruach shuri the Megillah, right? That would be a mitzvah to l'shmor lenufi, and you can make a takuna. I think that if you think about what the Rambam would really think, it's that. And he says this more or less openly in Moira Chalak Bais, that what he would really think is that since the Torah is identified by him with truth, so it doesn't even make sense to talk about changing it. Because the truth is either true or not true. You can't become better or worse. Torah is the emes, this is the truth, and the truth can't be improved or anything. So therefore, it doesn't make sense. Since Torah is Moshe to him is Chikim Mishputim Sadikim, it's the most true Torah that's possible to be. So it's like saying to the Rambam lo yisuster is something like saying 2 plus 2 will never be something different than 4. It's not even a din; it's a fact. It just can't be. Now, what could be? Of course, and the Rambam says this more or less openly. You have to look over the Pyrek. Of course, reality changes. Of course, that doesn't actually mean that the mitzvahs have to be the same. You have to read the Pyrek where he says this. And the Rambam says the fetish in I don't know when Pyrek mem something.
What do you mean by reality?
I'll explain you what I mean.
Reality is things that
No, of course, the real reality, but the social reality changes. And therefore, zog the Rambam in Parak Mem. Zog the Rambam in Parak Mem, and the Rambam in Parak Lametes and Parak Mem tries to define what it means to have a true Torah. Parak Baz. And he explains that basically it's true because it's true. Very simple. Very deceptively simple. And that's what it means to be God. Okay, but let's not get to that. And then he says...
You said, why he says Torah is Shemayim, why? Because it's truth. Like it goes like fakert, right? He doesn't believe in the Torah because he believes it's Min Shemayim. Because he believes in the Torah, it was...
He tries to define here why we don't believe people that say that there's other Torahs. But he also says over here...
Did he say something like I just said? You heard what I just said?
Yeah.
The reason why he believes in the Torah is not because you have to believe in the Torah. Like, the Torah is Min
It's
Shemayim.
because it's true, of course. That's really what he believes in the end.
Because it's true, that's why it's Min Shemayim.
What do you mean?
Why does he believe the Torah is Min Shemayim? How do you know the Torah is Min Shemayim?
He says, how do you know that this is the right Torah, really? And we have to read...
That's the God. How do you know this is the right Torah?
That this is God's... I think... No.
That's like the other one's not fake. Whatever.
No, I think that he doesn't need Messiah to tell him that the Torah is true. That's the important thing. No.
Yeah, what does he say?
In Parak Lametes and in Parak Mem. In Parak Lametes, yeah.
It's made of lots, my soil.
He does say he says something like in Egos and Album that you can, whoever every Chochem sees the Chochem, and so whatever. But didn't. I never understood that it means that.
Yeah, we have to read this Perukim very well to understand what he really thinks about this question. I think he tries to define what's the difference between a Torah that people made and Torah that. But he also talks about Leisusin. I'm trying to remember to find it where.
No,
ich meine days.
Like a statue to make a person.
It's nicht. Al Kapunim, the Rambam thinks that trying to think what he would think. Here says that the Rambam is the Torah is the best. It has to be in this Parak.
That's mine.
What do you want to bring out with
Oh, so there's something very weird with this whole Lesusser, which is that there's just a theoretical difference if you say that it's from God or not. And what kind of difference does that make? Right? What kind of a difference is there?
Why can't the Chacham say this is from God? He's saying, anyhow, it's Mechayev.
What?
If it's Mechayev, if they're current to the Rabbanim of Mechayev V'doyus.
It's basically a new mitzvah, right?
Yeah, but he's saying the difference is what you're attributing it to. That's what you were asking, really. What's the difference
Right.
between attributing it today? What's wrong with attributing it today?
Okay.
You were saying
It's a Chale Gimel, the Parak that I meant. So the Rambam in some Parak Chale Gimel, I have to connect it with this Parak, but in Chale Gimel, Parak Mem Aleph, see? Different Parak Mem Aleph. This Parak Mem Aleph is also relevant to Parak Mem. It says like this. Yedia lifnai Hashem yisal shenia Torah zi yesh tzorich b'chol zman v'mokim k'fishini ha'mekoymes v'meros le'tesefes oigeroim. Lefikach Israel le'tesefes v'oigeroim. You have to read that Rambam. The Rambam says since the God knows that the Torah needs to be changed, therefore he says le'sa'esef le'sigreim any. The Hirshem zlois l'chach me'ador to make takunas or to change things. And if anyone would be able to do it, then it would be too many machloikes. Therefore, anyone that says that he does that, we kill him. But only the Chacham are allowed to do it. That's basically something like that's what it says. He's explaining the mitzvah Zukken Mamre. This is technically Tam mitzvah Zukken Mamre. But what it seems to be going on is that we would say something like this. the core of the Torah has to be true. Just the best way to have truth and justice and so on. But does that mean that I have to sometimes the truth that mechayev that should make a certain takuna or a certain geder, or to even be matter certain thing? It was mittel yesterday. Doesn't matter. He really puts a shu into this, and he seems to believe that a shu doesn't need a novi either. Why would it need a novi, by the way? Again, you have to remember the problem here is not about. We have to think about this, but the problem is not if God said it or not. That doesn't really change anything. The Rambam says openly that it's about people understanding that it's from God, or people taking it seriously. Okay, yeah, but I'm asking you, what's all of this? I think that it was really. Yeah, no, he seems to say here. What do you mean? It's not controversial. He says, it says to make matter things, as he explains. He quotes Perish Akdamas HaMishnah. Of course, that over there it says a novi, but it might be true for a chacham also. And it's definitely true. It's not printed in whatever. That's not relevant. And he says that the vart is it's somewhat faked. It's somewhat the chacham that understand what the Torah is trying to get at. They could make takunas in order to make it better, to make sure that it works, right? To make sure that it works. If you're gonna go around saying that the Torah changes, then people will think that the truth changes, and then we'll have no Torah at all. That's what we have to kill anyone that changes the Torah without the correct permission. That's basically what the Rambam said. That's what Azukim Mamre is. But if you have the correct permission, then you must change the Torah, because there's no way for the Torah to survive without it being changed. Lefi Ametzias, not lefi the Torah, lefi the reality. Like all the we see people being nechshel on this, so we make a geder and so on. We see this not working, so we mevatel the mitzvah. All kind of different ways. Now, if you go back to trying to think what happens over here, if you go back to the Akdama that he said in his Akdama, what he's basically saying is, Chacham cannot say that they have a mitzvah, and to him the real problem with saying that God changed it is that then you could become a Christian. I don't know why else there shouldn't be allowed to say it, but they say that it's derech takun v'loy seifes. They don't say God. We're not being mois falator, and the theoretical meaning of that I think would only be we're not changing the truth. It's not that yesterday was a bad thing to kill and today it's a good thing. No, it's always a good thing to believe in God. That's the change is the same. Yet to do so we have to make a new Yom Tov to celebrate that or to promote that more because people for whatever technical reason, that changed, right? So that's I think that's how we would understand it, but yeah. No, so I think so. There's nothing particular with Peter. Okay, no, I think that the Rambam. What I'm getting at here is that the Rambam thinks that Nevi'im Eksivim, unlike the Rav, that Nevi'im Eksivim have something to teach us. Nevi'im Eksivim have nothing to teach us besides for being Mashiach, besides for doing Tshiva, which is just again repeating that you should do what it says in the Torah. Besides from Megillah Esther, since that's just the halacha of Torah Shebal Peh, basically, because Megillah Esther doesn't have power because of it being Nevi'im, it just has power because of it being Torah Shebal Peh, right? The Koras Nevi'im, but not the Koras Nevi'im. It didn't. Well, it doesn't. It's irrelevant if that's Chum or Nevi'im here. It's relevant that it's Takuna and not a Asuf al Torah, right? The Rambam says the Megillah is not a Asuf al Torah. So technically, the Megillah Esther we need simply because it's a halacha. Forget Megillah Esther is important because it's a part of the Mishnah that happens to be printed in the Bible. Mishnah there's something very funny going on. Nevi'im can't have only 5 books and Zehu the Torah side. Nevi'im, the Chacham could do whatever they want, right? That's what I was reading you from Parak Mamalav. It's L'chatchila tell the fact that the Torah doesn't change, but Chacham do whatever they want, and you have to be a Chacham. If you're not a Chacham, we kill you. That's a Zokin Mamalav. And therefore, Megillah Esther really belongs to the category of Hilchas Torah Shebal Peh. Well, he says if you look at it like sachakal of the things we have to do, which is what the Ramam is, then you understand that Megillah Esther is one of the things we have to do. Just like there's Tarek Mitzvahs in the Chemesh, and there's some halachas in Chazal, and one of them happens to be printed in the Bible, and that's Megillah Esther. So I don't think this is not talking about Din Kriya. I think that this the Ravid maybe is talking about it. The Rambam is saying that we can, after Mashiach comes, we could burn the Nevi'im, and we cannot burn the Megillah because we still have to read the Megillah.
Right. That's what Rambam says.
Doesn't say you have to read it.
So why?
That's the Ravid it says. So because there is truth.
Because there is truth, but there's no truth in it. That's more than the Torah. You see, there's as much truth that is in it as Hilchas Torah Shebal Peh. I think we have to understand. He says because Megillah is Kodesh Chachamim. the Megillah has added truth in the sense that all Tikkun Chacham have.
Why did he bring it?
Oh, this is the language. This is the language.
Judaism that we need. This is the
Right.
whole bookshelf.
No, because there's some things that the Rambam. You can sometimes ask on the Rambam why the Rambam thinks we need the Chumash. The Rambam thinks we need the Chumash. The Rambam thinks that we actually learn halachas from the Chumash even if they don't say in the Gemara. He doesn't believe that the Gemara is like Tosfos says that it has all the Chumash you need. He doesn't believe the Nevi'im Ksivim maybe. But Chumash you do need.
So also in Megillah says you learn things from.
We can learn halachas from Hilchas Kriyas Megillah, Hilchas Pira.
You hold that. Why not push it?
You could look at Masechtas Megillah. Why? Because part of the halachas we need the Megillah. That's like that's like the Bris Kirov. That's a chayfetz. It's just like a shoy for the Megillah. It's not like it's not a part of the Torah.
Yeah, he's got the right also. The Bris Kirov.
He talks about there's a Bris Kirov on this shtickle.
Yeah, he's right.
Right. No, I don't know if the Rambam is talking about that. I don't feel like over here.
No, you want to go strong, maybe then that you want that's stuck in the Mashiach is going to be a Megillah, not a Sefer or whatever.
I don't think. Yeah, that's what the Briskirov says.
No,
that's what comes out. I don't think here it seems like he's saying that Nevi'im Ksivim we don't need. Mashiach Megillah says that we do need. Just like we need Chamesh Torah and Halachas Torah Shbel Pesh. As we have learned in Halachas Torah that. They're not Patal. Of course, Torah are Butla in a certain sense. In other words, they keep on changing according to what Chum understand.
It is as a sefer, not as a chaf to the mitzvah.
No, not about the Chisvei HaKodesh, whatever. I don't know. Not about the Loisas and Hashem Lekech, whatever that adin is. I don't think he's talking about that. He's talking about the content here. The content of Nevi'im Ksivim are empty. There's no content in Nevi'im Ksivim. They're informationless. They just do the Torah. Megillah says that has some information, right? Because it has a mitzvah. Which is a mitzvah with the Rechum, just like Sechtas Pekirim has information that we need, right? He's using both. He's not trying to value the value of the Bible or the value of Chacham. It's important. We need it. You want to be like the Rambam says. In order to be a good Jew, you have to know Chumash and Mishnah Torah of the Rambam, right? Which summarizes Torah Shbel Peh. So the same thing. You have to know Megillah Esther also.
Well,
like I said, just like you need the Chumash, for whichever reason you need the Chumash. Yeah, because to know the halacha, you need to know also the Torah Shbeksav of it, obviously. I don't know exactly, but that's another whole thing. Then the Rambam actually... I don't think he's saying that, that's why. Don't talking about that. Maybe, I understand, no, I don't know. I don't think it's about that. I don't think. I think, then he says something else. This is another thing. Then he says another whole pshat, which is totally unconnected to what I'm saying now. This whole shtickle, which you have to understand. That's it. That all the tzuras will be forgotten, but my pirim not. That part I don't know what it means. I understand what he's meaning, what he's saying. It could be that he means to translate that. This is another thing, right? He says.
Oh, 1 minute.
This is another whole thing. With the Kisvei HaKodesh.
Because why?
Oh, because we still have to do tshiva. Kol Nevi'im mitzav mal tshiva v'oz negulim. That's luchas tshiva.
So maybe
Megillah says that nothing. I would say that Megillah says that nothing to do with doing tshiva. That would be a piram Torah. That Megillah says it doesn't say that you have to do tshiva. It does say that David. The Rambam said the Kol Keren Eilov.
Maybe the Eitzim Zichron Atzuris is also part of the.
And this is more similar to Megillah's Tanas. We have to get. Okay, I have to go. We have to, maybe next week. You have to figure out this part.
From the Yishalmi brings the same akar for both in Yanim.
But this is
Yosef Kol Yosef, and hey, he doesn't bring that pasuk at all. It brings his own pasuk.
We have to look it up. I brought the Yerushalmi in this paper. Okay.
He changes the whole thing.
Yes, I'm coming. 1 minute. I understand. Okay.